The courtroom is silent, except for the echo of a gavel slamming down, signaling the shocking verdict. The air is thick with tension as a heavy silence descends upon the crowd. Clara Miller, 34, stands at the front of the courtroom, her body rigid, eyes fixed ahead. She had hoped for justice, but instead, the weight of betrayal falls upon her. The jury has spoken, but Clara's mind races with doubt. Had she misread the entire case? Was her fight in vain? A bitter feeling rises in her chest as the courtroom slowly empties, the finality of the decision setting in like a cold stone. Clara turns and walks toward the door, the sound of her footsteps the only thing breaking the stillness. Behind her, her lawyer, Benjamin West, 41, watches in stunned silence, his face betraying the shock of the verdict. He had believed in Clara's innocence too, but now, everything is uncertain. Clara sits in her car, staring at the empty streets in front of her. The rain taps lightly against the windshield, adding to the weight of the silence that surrounds her. She should be heading home, but the road ahead feels uncertain, unclear. Her mind is clouded with doubts and questions. How could this happen? Why was the truth ignored? The weight of the courtroom's cold atmosphere still lingers in her chest. In the back of her mind, she hears Benjamin's voice urging her to stay strong, but her resolve is crumbling. She grips the steering wheel tighter, the frustration building. Clara wants to scream, but she doesn't. Instead, she exhales slowly, as if trying to expel the anger and helplessness that threaten to consume her. The world outside the car seems distant, a blur of rain and headlights. Her phone vibrates in her pocket. Clara hesitates before picking it up, unsure of what more the world wants from her. Clara pulls into a small parking lot near a local cafe. The rain has stopped, but the air is still heavy with moisture. She exits the car and takes a deep breath, trying to clear her head. As she walks toward the door of the cafe, she sees a familiar face sitting by the window. Benjamin West, age 41, is waiting for her. He stands as she enters, his face softening into a gentle smile. Clara nods but doesn't return the smile. "How's your head?" he asks, referring to the trial. Clara shrugs, walking to the counter. "You did your best," he continues, his tone full of sympathy. Clara sighs, not wanting to hear words of comfort. Instead, she orders a coffee, her movements mechanical. Benjamin watches her, his concern growing, but he says nothing more. Clara and Benjamin sit together in the quiet cafe, the sounds of soft conversation and clinking cups filling the air. Clara stares out the window, her gaze distant, lost in thought. "I thought we had them," she murmurs. Benjamin shifts in his seat, unsure of how to respond. He's never been good with silence, but right now that's all he has. They've always been able to talk through things, but this verdict, this betrayal, it's something neither of them know how to navigate. "What's next for you?" he finally asks, breaking the silence. Clara doesn't respond immediately. Her eyes flicker briefly toward Benjamin before returning to the window. "I don't know," she replies quietly, her voice barely a whisper. "But I have to find out." Clara stands outside the courthouse, her hands trembling as she grips the papers she's clutching. The cold air cuts through her, but it's nothing compared to the coldness she feels inside. Every step she takes seems heavier than the last. It's as if the world itself has turned its back on her, leaving her to carry the weight of the injustice alone. She doesn't know where to go, or what to do next. The fight, once so clear in her mind, now feels impossible. Her eyes drift to the street, where cars pass by, indifferent to her existence. For a moment, Clara feels completely invisible, lost in the sea of people. Just then, a voice breaks the silence. It's Benjamin West, calling her name softly from behind. He's come out to check on her, but even his presence feels distant, unable to reach the chasm inside her. Clara doesn't turn to him. Instead, she closes her eyes and inhales deeply, bracing for what comes next. Days pass since the trial, and Clara Miller, age 34, feels the weight of her defeat hanging over her like a storm cloud. Despite her inner turmoil, she knows she has to keep moving, keep fighting. But where does she start? The truth still eludes her, and her sense of helplessness deepens. One evening, as she sits at her desk in her small apartment, a message pops up on her phone. It's from an unknown number, but the content is chilling. You're not alone. Clara stares at the message, unsure of its origin. Her first instinct is to dismiss it as a prank, but something in the back of her mind tells her it's real. Her pulse quickens as she thinks of the possibilities. Could someone know something that could help her? She stares at the message for a long time, heart racing before texting back with a simple question. Who is this? The reply comes almost immediately. Meet me at the old library tomorrow at 10 a.m. You'll understand. The next morning, Clara arrives at the old library, its looming structure shrouded in mist. The building, once grand, now appears abandoned, its windows darkened, and the entrance door creaking slightly with the wind. Clara hesitates for a moment before stepping inside, her heart pounding in her chest. The library is eerily quiet, its wooden floors creaking underfoot. She looks around, searching for anyone who might be waiting for her, but the place feels abandoned, save for the endless rows of dusty books. Just as she considers turning back, she hears a faint voice from behind one of the towering bookshelves. Clara. The voice calls softly. Clara spins around, her breath catching in her throat. A figure emerges from the shadows. Benjamin West, age 41. His presence is calm, but there's something unsettling about the way he watches her. You've been looking for answers, he says quietly. I have some, but you're not going to like what you hear. Clara takes a step closer to Benjamin, still unsure of his intentions. What do you know? She asks, her voice trembling slightly. Benjamin meets her gaze, his eyes shadowed by the dim light of the library. I know who did this to you, he says, his tone steady. But you need to be ready for the truth. Clara's stomach twists as a chill runs down her spine. Tell me, she demands, her voice hardening with a sense of urgency. Benjamin hesitates, glancing around as if to ensure they're not being overheard. It's not just the trial. The system you've been fighting against is much bigger than you think, he says quietly. There are people who've been manipulating everything from the start. People you trust. Clara's heart races. Who? She whispers, her eyes wide with shock. Benjamin sighs deeply. You'll have to trust me if you want to expose them, but first you need to find the missing piece. It's hidden, and you won't be the only one looking for it. Clara is left standing in the quiet of the library, after Benjamin's cryptic words. The weight of the conversation sinks in, and her mind races with 1,000 thoughts. She doesn't know what to make of what he said, but the idea that someone she trusts might be part of the conspiracy shakes her to the core. As she exits the library, the wind bites at her skin, the cold air mirroring the turmoil she feels inside. She doesn't know where to start, but the search for this missing piece has just become her new mission. Clara knows the path ahead will be treacherous, and she can't trust anyone, not even herself. But she's willing to take the risk. She has no choice. The stakes are too high. The search for the truth will lead her into dangerous territory, and Clara must decide if she's prepared to face the consequences of uncovering what's hidden. Back in her apartment, Clara starts to piece together the fragments of information she's collected. A whiteboard filled with names, dates, and connections dominates the wall, and the apartment is a mess of papers, files, and photographs. The weight of the case is pressing down on her as she stares at the wall, trying to make sense of everything. But as she looks over the notes, one name keeps standing out, someone she never thought to suspect, someone close to her. Clara feels a pang of betrayal, and a sense of dread fills her. This new revelation changes everything. She needs to confront this person, but she doesn't know how. The fear of what she might uncover, of what she might lose, keeps her up late into the night. Clara knows the truth is within reach, but it might destroy everything she's worked for. Clara's search has led her to an unexpected place, a small, run-down apartment complex tucked away on the edge of the city. The building seems forgotten by time, its walls cracked, and its windows fogged up. Clara walks through the worn hallways, each step echoing in the stillness, her heart racing with anticipation. She's following the lead Benjamin gave her, a contact who might know more about the conspiracy she's uncovering. But as she reaches the door to apartment 12, a sense of unease creeps over her. She knocks, waiting for what feels like an eternity. The door creaks open, revealing a man in his late 40s, rough around the edges with a grizzled face. His name is Rick Dalton, and he doesn't look like someone who's willing to trust easily. "What do you want?" he growls, eyeing Clara with suspicion. She knows she's treading dangerous ground, but there's no turning back now. Rick Dalton steps aside and motions for Clara to enter. The apartment is cramped, cluttered with old furniture, and the air smells of stale cigarettes. Clara takes a cautious step inside, her eyes scanning the room for anything that could be useful. Rick slams the door behind her, and the sound is sharp in the silence. "You're looking for something, I can see that," he says, his tone a mix of gruffness and curiosity. Clara doesn't respond immediately. Instead, she lets her eyes drift over the stacks of papers and photographs on the coffee table. "I need information," she finally says, her voice steady. "I'm getting closer to the truth, but I need your help." Rick laughs bitterly. "Truth?" he repeats. "You want the truth, lady. The truth is a dangerous thing to seek, but I'll tell you what I know if you can handle it." Clara doesn't flinch. She's come this far, and there's no turning back. Rick begins to talk, and Clara listens intently, absorbing every word. "It's not just the system you're up against," Rick says, his voice low and conspiratorial. "There's a group high up pulling all the strings. They're the ones who've been manipulating everything, and they've got people everywhere, including the courts." Clara feels a chill run down her spine as the enormity of what Rick is saying sinks in. The people she trusted, the system she believed in, were all part of a larger, more sinister game. "You're not going to get justice through the courts," Rick continues. "Not unless you're willing to expose the truth, all of it, but that means going after them, and they don't take kindly to people like you poking around." Clara's thoughts swirl with possibilities, but one thing is clear. She has no choice but to follow this dangerous path. There's no turning back now. Clara leaves Rick's apartment with a new sense of urgency. The pieces of the puzzle are starting to fit together, but the revelation that there's a shadowy group behind the conspiracy only deepens the mystery. As she walks down the hallway, she notices a figure standing near the building's entrance. It's Benjamin West, age 41. His eyes lock with hers as she approaches. "I didn't think you'd find him," Benjamin says, his voice betraying a hint of admiration. Clara stops in front of him, her expression serious. "What now?" she asks, her voice edged with frustration. "You're deeper in this than I thought," Benjamin responds. "But there's one more thing you need to know. Someone close to you is working with them." Clara feels the ground shift beneath her. "Who?" she asks, but Benjamin doesn't answer immediately. "You'll find out soon enough," he says, before turning and walking away. Clara watches him go, her heart pounding as she tries to make sense of the new twist. Clara can't shake the feeling that she's being watched. Every step she takes feels like a step closer to uncovering something that might destroy everything she knows. That night, she returns to her apartment and begins to piece together her next move. But as she's flipping through documents, she hears a knock at her door. Her heart skips a beat as she stands up to answer. When she opens the door, there's no one there. But on the floor, she finds a single envelope, sealed with a wax stamp. Inside is a photograph, Clara's own face, with a red X drawn through it. Her breath catches in her throat as the weight of the threat settles in. Whoever is behind this, they know who she is, and they're not afraid to make their presence known. Clara closes the door slowly, her mind racing with fear and determination. She knows the stakes have just been raised, and she's not backing down. Clara is standing in front of a massive, imposing building, a corporate skyscraper that looms over the city like a fortress. She's come to confront the people behind the conspiracy, but she knows it's a dangerous move. The cold wind bites at her skin, but her determination is stronger than the chill. With every step she takes, the weight of the truth pushes her forward. She's had enough of the games, the manipulation, and the lies. Clara's phone buzzes in her pocket, a message from Benjamin. "Be careful. They'll be expecting you." But Clara doesn't slow down. She's been pushed to the edge and now it's time to push back. The building's glass doors open automatically as she approaches, and Clara steps inside, her heart pounding. The receptionist greets her with a smile, but Clara's expression is hard, focused. "I need to see your CEO," Clara states, her voice unwavering. The receptionist hesitates for a moment but nods. Clara's confrontation is about to begin. Clara stands in a sleek, modern elevator, the soft hum of the machinery, the only sound as she ascends to the top floor. Her heart races with anticipation, but her exterior remains calm. She has to play it cool, act like she belongs here. The elevator dings, signaling her arrival. The doors slide open, and Clara steps into a luxurious lobby, the floor polished to a high shine. The receptionist, a young woman with a bright smile, directs her to the CEO office. Clara's mind is swirling with everything she's uncovered so far. The lies, the betrayals, and the threats. But now, she's finally face to face with the people behind it all. As she walks down the hall, the tension in the air is palpable. Her steps echo in the empty corridor, each one bringing her closer to the confrontation she's been dreading. Clara finally enters the CEO's office, a space filled with polished wood and high-end furniture. The CEO, a woman in her early 50s, sits behind a large mahogany desk, her demeanor calm and confident. Clara doesn't sit. She stands in front of the desk, her eyes locked on the woman. "I know what you've been doing," Clara says, her voice sharp. The CEO's lips curl into a slight, knowing smile. "Do you?" she replies coolly. "You think you know everything, but you don't. You're a pawn just like the rest of them." Clara feels the sting of the words, but she stands her ground. "I'm not a pawn. And I'm not leaving here until I expose the truth." The CEO's smile fades, and for a moment, the room feels colder. Clara's heart pounds as the stakes rise. This isn't just a conversation anymore. It's a battle for everything Clara believes in. The confrontation escalates. The CEO's tone shifts, her voice suddenly colder. "You don't understand the bigger picture," she says, leaning forward slightly. "What you're trying to uncover isn't just about justice. It's about survival." Clara feels a knot form in her stomach, but she doesn't back down. "I don't care about your excuses," Clara says, her voice unwavering. "I've seen the consequences of your actions, and I'm going to stop you." The CEO leans back in her chair, folding her hands in front of her. "You think you can just waltz in here and undo everything?" she asks, her eyes narrowing. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Clara doesn't flinch. She's already come too far to turn back now. "I know exactly who I'm dealing with," she responds. "And you're going down." The standoff reaches its breaking point. "I will." The CEO stands up suddenly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You have no idea what you're up against," she says, her voice low and threatening. Clara remains motionless, her eyes never leaving the CEO's face. "I don't need to know," she replies, her voice steady. "I just need to expose you." The CEO glares at Clara for a long moment, the silence thick and heavy. Then, without warning, she presses a button on her desk, and the doors to the office open. Security guards step in, their eyes focused on Clara. "I don't think you'll be leaving here with the truth," the CEO says, her voice dripping with contempt. Clara's heart races, but she doesn't show fear. She steps forward, her expression unwavering. "I'm not leaving without it," she says, her voice resolute. The guards start to move toward her, but Clara stands her ground, ready for whatever comes next. Clara steps out of the elevator onto the top floor of the skyscraper, where the confrontation she's been dreading is now unavoidable. Her mind is racing, and her pulse quickens with each step. She's prepared for this, but the weight of what's at stake still crushes her chest. As she walks down the sleek hallway, the sterile glass-walled conference room comes into view. It's pristine, cold, and as corporate as she expected. This is the heart of the power she's been fighting against. The doors open automatically, and Clara enters, her eyes immediately locking onto the CEO, who stands by the window, looking out over the city. "You've come a long way," the CEO says, her tone icy. "But this is where your journey ends." Clara doesn't flinch. She stands tall, her posture firm, ready to face the woman who's been orchestrating it all. "I'm not going anywhere until I expose you," Clara says, voice steady. The CEO turns to face Clara, her cold, calculated gaze never leaving her. "Do you think you can undo everything we've built?" she asks, her voice smooth but carrying an underlying threat. Clara stands in front of her, unwavering. "You've built your empire on lies and manipulation," Clara replies, her voice sharp. "But your empire is crumbling, and I'm the one who's going to bring it down." The CEO's eyes narrow. "You have no idea what you're dealing with. What you've uncovered is just the tip of the iceberg. You think exposing us will change anything. You're too late." Clara feels the weight of those words, but she doesn't falter. "It's never too late," Clara says, her voice low but fierce. "And I'm not going anywhere until I've made you pay for everything you've done." The CEO smirks, taking a step toward Clara. "You're just a pawn in a much bigger game. You never stood a chance," she says, her voice dripping with disdain. Clara's heart races, but she stands her ground. "Maybe," Clara admits, her voice steady, "but pawns can still change the game." The CEO scoffs, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. "You think you're the first person to try and take me down? I've destroyed bigger threats than you." Clara doesn't respond immediately. Instead, she lets the silence linger, the weight of her words hanging in the air. "The truth is, you never thought someone like me would get this far," Clara continues, her eyes flashing with resolve. "But I've made it this far, and I'm not stopping now." The CEO's expression falters for the first time, and Clara can see the cracks forming in her icy exterior. The tension in the room becomes almost unbearable. The CEO, now visibly annoyed, steps back to her desk and picks up a phone, dialing quickly. "Get security up here," she says curtly, her voice laced with authority. Clara's eyes never leave her, her breath steady. She knows the danger she's in now, but she won't back down. "You can bring your security," Clara says, her voice unwavering, "but it won't change the truth." The CEO smirks again, but there's a flicker of doubt in her eyes. "I don't need security to deal with you," she says coldly. "I have other ways of making people disappear." Clara feels the cold grip of fear tighten around her chest, but she refuses to show it. "Then do it," Clara says, her voice low and defiant. "But I will still make sure the world knows what you've done." The door bursts open, and two security guards, large and imposing, step into the room. They immediately move toward Clara, but she doesn't flinch. The CEO watches, a smug expression on her face. "You can't stop what's already in motion," the CEO says as the guards approach. But Clara isn't intimidated. With a sudden burst of energy, she pushes past one of the guards and heads for the door, refusing to be detained. As she nears the exit, the CEO stands up, her voice cold and venomous. "You think you've won?" she calls after Clara. "This is only the beginning. You've made a mistake you'll never recover from." Clara doesn't turn back as she exits the room, her steps quick and determined. She knows that the road ahead will be hard, but she also knows this fight isn't over. It's just beginning. The news of Clara's pursuit has spread like wildfire. And now, every step she takes feels heavier. She walks through a desolate alleyway, her footsteps echoing against the walls, her mind racing with the consequences of her actions. Her phone buzzes again, a message from Benjamin. "They know you're coming." Clara clenches her fist, determination burning in her eyes. There's no turning back now. She's crossed every line, and yet, as the city around her pulses with indifference, she knows her fight is just beginning. The shadows seem to stretch longer, mirroring her own uncertainty as she approaches the meeting spot. She takes a deep breath, steadying herself before she opens the door to a quiet, dimly lit warehouse. Inside, the tension is thick, and Clara knows she's stepping into a storm. But she also knows that this is where the truth will finally come to light. The time for hiding is over. Inside the warehouse, Clara's eyes scan the room. The smell of dust and metal fills the air, and the flickering overhead lights create an eerie atmosphere. She's met by a group of figures standing in the shadows, their faces obscured. One figure steps forward. It's Rick Dalton, his rugged face more serious than she's ever seen it. "You came alone?" he asks, his voice low, gravelly. Clara nods. "I don't need backup." Rick eyes her for a moment, then motions for her to follow him deeper into the warehouse. As they walk, Clara can feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her. Every footstep, every breath, feels like it could be her last. She's made enemies powerful enough to crush her, but she's ready to face them. "You're about to learn more than you bargained for," Rick mutters, his face hardening as he leads her toward the back. Rick stops in front of a metal door and turns to Clara. "This is it," he says, his voice barely above a whisper. Clara's pulse races as he opens the door, revealing a small, high-tech room filled with monitors and servers. On the screens, files and images flash by, detailed records of the conspiracy she's been trying to expose. Clara approaches one of the monitors, her eyes scanning the information with disbelief. Everything she thought she knew is now in question. "This is the heart of it all," Rick continues. "The people who control everything, the ones who make the calls, and you've been chasing shadows." Clara feels a rush of both anger and relief. She's finally getting answers, but she knows there's no turning back now. "I didn't come this far to stop now," Clara says firmly. "I'm going to bring them down." As Clara absorbs the information, her phone buzzes again. This time, it's a call. She answers, and the voice on the other end is familiar, but it's not who she expected. "Clara," Benjamin's voice crackles. "I just got word. They're on to you. You need to leave now." Clara's heart races as she glances back at the door, knowing the danger is closing in. She can't run. Not now. "I'm not going anywhere," Clara replies, her voice unwavering. "This is the only chance I have to stop them. If I leave now, they win." Benjamin is silent for a moment, and when he speaks again, his tone is full of urgency. "Clara, it's not just them you have to worry about anymore." Clara's stomach drops as she realizes what he's implying. There's more to this than she knew. She's not just fighting an external enemy, she's fighting people within her own circle. Clara steps back from the monitors, the weight of Benjamin's words settling heavily on her shoulders. She feels the ground beneath her shift as the full scope of the conspiracy starts to unfold. But she doesn't have time to dwell on it. The sound of footsteps approaching breaks her concentration, and Clara's heart skips a beat. She turns to Rick. "They're here, aren't they?" she asks, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her. Rick's face hardens. "Get out now," he urges, pushing Clara toward the exit. As she turns to flee, she hears the sound of doors crashing open behind her. There's no more time for hesitation. Clara bolts toward the back door, her pulse pounding in her ears. She's running for her life, but she's also running toward the truth. And the truth will finally expose everything. Clara stands outside the courthouse, the weight of the last few days settling on her shoulders. The sun is setting, casting an orange glow over the city. Her heart is heavy with the uncertainty of what comes next, but she knows one thing for sure: the truth has been exposed. Her fight has brought down powerful enemies, but the cost has been high. She's lost friends, trust, and pieces of herself along the way. But as she looks at the courthouse doors, she feels a strange sense of peace. She's done everything she could. The truth is out there now, for the world to see. A phone buzzes in her pocket. It's a message from Benjamin. "Justice is not the same for everyone. But you did what needed to be done." Clara takes a deep breath, her gaze unwavering as she turns toward the door. The battle may be over, but the war for justice is far from finished. Inside the courthouse, the final trial is in full swing. Clara watches from the gallery, her heart racing as the prosecutor presents the final piece of evidence. It's a damning photograph, one that will seal the fate of the people who tried to destroy her. She glances at the defense table, where the faces of the guilty are contorted with fear. Clara's eyes catch the gaze of the defendant, the person who set everything in motion. Their eyes lock for a brief moment, and Clara feels a rush of satisfaction. It's over. She can't help but think of all the sacrifices she made to get to this moment. The lies, the manipulation, the moments of doubt. But standing here watching them crumble, she knows it was all worth it. Court's decision is imminent, and with it, a sense of closure. The gavel slams down, and the judge announces the verdict. Clara exhales, feeling as though a heavy weight has been lifted from her chest. The room erupts into murmurs, but Clara remains still, her gaze fixed on the defendant as they are led away in handcuffs. She can't help but feel a sense of bittersweet triumph. This isn't just her victory. It's a victory for everyone who has suffered in silence, everyone who's been wrong. As Clara exits the courthouse, the cool evening air greets her. She takes a deep breath, savoring the moment. The streets are still and quiet, and the weight of the city feels different now. There's a sense of peace that wasn't there before. But as Clara walks, she knows that justice, in its purest form, is always a fleeting thing. The fight will continue, but for now, this moment belongs to her. Back at her apartment, Clara sits in front of a window, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. The city stretches out before her, and the lights twinkle in the distance. She looks out at the skyline, reflecting on everything she's been through. The quietness of the apartment feels like a cocoon, a safe place after everything that's happened. As she stares into the night, Clara thinks of those who have helped her along the way. Benjamin, Rick, even the people who doubted her. They all played a part in this journey. And now, as she finally begins to heal, she knows that the fight for justice is not just about taking down the bad guys. It's about standing up, no matter the cost. Clara smiles faintly, a tear slipping down her cheek. This is the start of her new life, one where the shadows no longer control her. As the days pass, Clara begins to piece her life back together. The media frenzy around her victory slowly dies down, and the world moves on. But Clara knows the truth now, and that truth has changed her. She walks into a new day, carrying with her the lessons of the past. It's not about revenge anymore. It's about using what she's learned to create something better. Clara knows that the road ahead will be challenging, but for the first time she feels ready. Her future is no longer defined by the past. She's no longer a victim. She's the hero of her own story. And as she steps out into the world, she feels the weight of the world lift, if only for a moment. It's time to build something new,